Welcome to the Profit Powerhouse, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with visionary entrepreneurs to uncover the real strategies fueling their success. Together, we'll explore the key drivers of their growth, the hurdles they've overcome, and how they've mastered the financial side of their businesses. Our mission? To arm you with the insights and tools you need to elevate your own profits to the next level. Ready to dive in? This episode is brought to you by Free Cash Flow Agency, the online accounting firm dedicated to helping digital businesses maximize tax savings and fuel long-term profitability. Now let's welcome your host and founder of FCF, Alan Chen.
Hey everyone out there, my name is Alan Chen, CPA and CEO of FreeCashFlow.io. Welcome to Profit Powerhouse, the podcast where we sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs to uncover the secret behind their success. We're here to learn what drives their growth, the challenges they overcome, and how they master their finances. Our goal, to help you achieve the same success while maximizing your profit. Alrighty, let's dive in. So in the crowded Amazon jungle, Elizabeth Green founded Jungler to help sellers achieve 8-figure revenue goals and beyond. With her experience as a former Amazon seller and a talent for simplifying complexity, Elizabeth has developed a top-down approach that jumpstarts seller success. Her clear, simplified processes enable businesses to scale efficiently. Raising 6 children, wow, I can't believe I'm reading that correctly, 6 children aged 5 to 13 with her husband has made Elizabeth an expert at scaling with simplicity. She is honored to share her inside knowledge with the Amazon seller community. Elizabeth, great to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Elizabeth, just to get things started off, can you share a little bit about your background? What inspired you to start your business and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I do not have a really sexy backstory. I went straight from full-time stay-at-home mom. As you heard, I have 6. It was a full-time job in and of itself. We also homeschool, which added another layer of complexity.
Incredible.
The entire family unit was home, right? Which was fantastic. We absolutely loved it. That was one of our factors in deciding to homeschool, among others. And my husband wasn't a part of that, which is totally normal and not really something most people would really think about. But it annoyed the crap out of us, and we wanted to change that. And so with all of the opportunities online these days, that leads to, okay, so there's some way to start some kind of business online. It's a little bit of a fire hose when you're trying to look up how to make money online. Like, oh my gosh, it's almost endless. And so tried a couple different things here and there. Of course, selling on Amazon is a huge piece of this. And this was, I don't know, 8 years ago or so. So that led us to the world of Amazon, which of course included advertising on Amazon. I, weirdly enough, discovered that I really enjoy just to me, it is advertising is a beautiful blend of both art and science. And I really dove into the data analytics side and just understanding, okay, not what these numbers are in particular, but how can I understand what these numbers mean? And more importantly, how do I know what to do about it once I understand the meaning of them? And that just really sort of fueled my interest in it. And I was a part of a lot of seller groups, and a lot of people were asking questions, and due to like just my interest in it, I had the answers. And so I was like, hey, I have an answer to your question. The one thing I absolutely love to this day about the Amazon seller community is just their openness. Like whenever anyone finds a tactic, or maybe Amazon has like, I don't want to say like a loophole, but there's something that you can do like a specific way if you do it like through the API versus something else. Like they will be very generous with that. It's not like, oh, I found this really crazy super secret thing that's been super beneficial to me. Like I'm not going to tell anybody about it. Like everyone's super, super open. And so I really wanted to be a part of that. And the one thing that I can offer was advertising insights, which led someone to go, hey, do you do this? And I was like, well, kind of, yeah, why not? And so started helping sellers manage their ad accounts, and then again just really fell head over heels in love with it. I could do that. I'm like literally sit there making up, like trying to blend different like interesting regression models and market analysis using spreadsheets on a weekend, and I will happily work the entire weekend doing that. Like that's my happy place. So it fit very well, and we've just been going ever since.
That's incredible, Elizabeth. And it's been what, 7 to 8 years now into this journey of advertisement.
I think I really should I'm just getting like, I should sit down and be like, okay, this is exactly when we got started. But I think as far as an agency goes, it's probably been 6 or 7 years.
Got it. And I'm sure there's some crazy or funny stories that along the journey. Would you mind sharing some of that with our audience?
Oh goodness, crazy bad or crazy good?
It can be crazy. It can be funny. whatever you prefer.
I think as the team has grown and as, just sort of I don't want to say like notability in the space. There are some people who know what I have and they like what I say on the subject. And so I find that flattering. And really, I'm just super enjoying going like down in the weeds, almost like down into the lab, trying to understand and connect all of these dots and diving in head first, feeling like I could barely tread water. I have no idea what the heck I'm doing, and just like banging away at it and emerging with something that I am super proud of and find interesting, and then sharing that with the community and seeing their reactions and how helpful it is. And so I think a lot of that for me has been just really diving into understanding things like market analysis and forecasting, which when I was just getting started, I'm sure like you might have something similar in like the tax where someone's like, oh, what is possible, right? Like give me an idea. If I did this, like forecast it out for me. And when you're just getting started, you're asking me to predict the future.
All the time.
I don't know. And I've since been able to muddle through and realize that talking about blending different ideas from different places, the math is there. It's just math at the end of the day. And I found, weirdly enough, I really like playing with math. And so I'll just sit there and start playing with math and saying like, okay, so this is how that would work. It's actually quite simple when you think about it. It's like a solve for X problem, which we all did, back in the day,
Algebra, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that the most recent projects I've worked on that people have like really started to love have been things like, okay, so if I'm launching a product, like if I'm starting from square one and zero, how do we even forecast out what that ad budget needs to look like and what can I expect from that? So that's been a really cool project that I've shared. Or other ones like that I've really, really liked have been looking at and actually developing our own internal bid algorithms. That because it's like mathematics. And in the beginning, I'll be honest, I did it because I didn't want to have to pay for software because software is crazy expensive. When I picked my head out of the sand, 3 or 4 years later, and was like, okay, so now let me look around because we have the resources and, this is a lot to do internally. And I went looking for a solution that could do what I'd already built. I realized they were all good, and I'm not knocking any software out there. I think there's some fantastic opportunities, but it's like when you've been doing something for so long and you've seen the results of it, and you look around and you say, like, I would have to actually give up something to be able to move on to a different system. And for me, quality is the most important thing.
Definitely.
Quality of work. And then now, I try to be pretty generous with my ideas and my insights. So I'm like, here's what I'm doing. Like, I mean, obviously it's going to be really hard to build your own internal tool, but if you want the mathematics and you want the systems behind it, like, here it is. And so that's been fantastic. Just like seeing sellers be able to take those insights, replicate them, get the results for themselves. I haven't created a course or something. I think that would drive me crazy. But just like the individual insights and things, that's been fantastic.
I mean, Elizabeth, sounds like you have a lot to share. So I'm sure a course would be very successful, right, in your line of work. Speaking of software, is there any recommended software? I know you develop your own algorithm, but just in other areas of your work that you recommend to Amazon sellers out there? As we approach holiday season, I'm sure, a lot of them can be discounted. I saw some deals over Cyber Monday, right? I pick up a couple myself, like DocuSign. They'll give me 40% off. But anyway, any one of them that you would recommend to listeners out there?
Yes, I think there's a couple places that software shines that we do use external software. One of them is on tracking keyword rankings. Basically to build those, it's an entire project of like scraping, and Amazon's not very keen on you scraping their site. So they have all kinds of workarounds and things, and just the amount of data backlog and analysis that needs to happen for those kind of tools is immense and astronomical, and a project that I will never ever want to tackle. I'm just going to leverage what's out there. And so for those tools, a very classic one that we still use is called Helium 10. There's one, Datarova is a fantastic option. There's other ones, Jungle Scout, Viral Launch. There's a plethora of different ones. I think you have to understand like how you want to, with any tool, my recommendation is always going to be, how do you already prefer to view data? What makes sense for you? What data points do you need? And then make sure that your tool is included, has those things included. The same thing being if you wanted to actually migrate to any sort of like management, like as far as like ad management software, it's, you want someone who thoroughly understands the mechanics of advertising, and then you also want, meaning the person picking the software understands the mechanics, because there's pros and cons to everything. And so my thing has always been, how do I understand the cons? And then how do I know the pros? And then what solution gives me more pros and like accounts for all the cons? That's what I'm looking for.
That makes a lot of sense.
For me, I want to be able to tweak every single button and lever, and yes, help me leverage the analytics, but like my most frustration, and honestly the brands who become dissatisfied with software over time are the ones where they get on a system and there's very little input on the system as far as like what you can do.
Right.
So in the beginning, they're like, oh, this is fantastic. I don't have to do anything. The system's going to do it for me. And then along the road, they realize like, well, actually it's making decisions that erode market share, or it's making decisions that like don't actually align with what we need in terms of our brand goals. And then when they go into the account manager, or maybe they're using manager, maybe they're using self-manage or whatever that is, and they're like, hey, we need to do this. Like, I need this very one specific thing. And the answer is, oh, I'm sorry, the system doesn't do that. You're like, well, if it's what's best for the brand, why am I not being able to do it? Because that's, quote, what the system does. Like, why am I boxed in by a system? And so that's something I never want to get to. And so I find if you can sort of do that, just like follow the what if statements, the if then statements to the end and conclusion, and realize that brings me to a place that I never want to go, well, then you're like, okay, then that's not for me, right? And then you can go find something that works for you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's what we've done.
Yeah, and it sounds like, just from the way you've been describing it, Elizabeth, a lot of your decisions are very math and data driven, right? Would you say that's kind of like the differentiating factor for, sellers out there who's looking for an ad agency, why they would choose you over, others, competitors out there, let's say?
Yes, I would say it absolutely has to do with data analysis and just skill-wise and ability. But I've found that on top of that, the most important aspect to having a partner is the ability to communicate, and to communicate well. Because anyone can say, oh yeah, we pushed spend this month and, sales increased, ROI went down a little bit, but, we feel like sales increased, right? Anyone can write a report. I can give you a dashboard, explain what the numbers were. In 2 minutes, you can be like, oh yeah, this number did this, and this number did this, and this number increased by 20%. That's not what brands want to know. The brands want to know, is my advertising effective? And the minute you only focus on just giving them the metrics, then it's up to the brand to determine if this is good or bad, which becomes a huge disservice if you're looking for somebody with that area of expertise, because they're saying, I feel like I have no context on good. Not that we want to, obviously we don't want to disillusion brands. We're like, everything's great. And they're looking at the number, they're like, that's the number I wanted to go down, and it's going like, no. Like, I'm not saying that brands don't have context on what they need to happen with their ads. I'm just saying they need to have a real strategic partner in understanding how to make sense of something, because the best brands out there, the ones that we absolutely love working with, are going, I know that there's market conditions. I know that my competitors decreased all of their prices and we have yet to catch up with that because our cost of goods are too high. Or I understand that there are extenuating circumstances that will change how my products perform in the market, and I allot for that. I just need someone to bridge that context piece for me to say, okay, here's an area where we might be falling behind, and maybe it's to no one's fault. It's a market trend. I mean, so many categories like competitors, like all of a sudden all the sellers notice like, wow, this is a really good category to be in, and like thousands of products spring up overnight. That's not unprecedented. So like, okay, I know there's market conditions. What can we do about it? And how do we navigate this? And that's where they're looking for that real strategic partner to say, okay, so maybe we don't focus on this, we focus on this, or hey, this is something we've noticed in the trends, or we noticed competitors doing this. Just a real extra pair of eyes to, again, just make sense of what they're seeing, because the data is immense and almost sometimes just like it feels insurmountable.
Overwhelming, right?
Yes, completely overwhelming.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Like when we talk to clients, they are entrepreneurs, but they're also like a jack of all trade, right? They have to do every part of the business, from operation, shipping, logistic, finances, and sometimes they're just stretched too thin and really just want a sounding board and someone that can give them a direction to move in, right? That they say, okay, this is the priority, this is where I should go next, right? And Elizabeth, just speaking of metrics, is there one that you will advise listeners or Amazon sellers out there to be the kind of their North Star, the guiding light that you have experienced?
There are priorities in terms of metrics. I would caution anyone against having one specific metric that's the only thing that they focus on, oblivious to all else. A classic example would be if you're only North Star and you're like, I don't even care about anything. I got a dashboard with one number, and as long as that number goes up, we're good, right? I don't know,
yeah, just that screenshot of sales, right? It's
right.
like, oh,
So
look at my sales.
Right. So let's say it's sales. Well, the counterbalance to that would be profits. I can grow sales all day long if you're fine with losing money. Most entrepreneurs are not okay with losing money, especially the brands that we work with. We work with a lot of what I call like founder-led brands, which my qualifications for that are the brands don't have, it's not that they can't have investment money, but for the most part, they're really just growing off of their own cash flow. So if you don't pay attention to cash flow, if you don't pay attention to profitability, they're not going to be in business a year from now, which is
definitely.
You need an ad partner that would be able to understand that, because you can't just be like, hey, sales are going up. Isn't everything great? And they're like, we're losing money month over month. This is not sustainable. I got 3 months of run rate. If we don't fix this, I'm out, right? Like, you need to pay attention to those things. So in the context of Amazon advertising, I would say there's a couple of metrics that we find, like if you want a simplified view, right? We can talk complexity all day long. My goal is for our accounts to let us worry about the complexity, and then we'll explain the complexity, and you can just keep an eye on top line. So I would still say total sales is definitely an aspect. The one really interesting thing about the Amazon ad platform in particular is that it's very unique. But Amazon advertising does have a direct impact on organic market share. There's still that correlation there. And so for that, if there was no correlation, then yeah, let's just look at ROI. But because of that correlation, you really want to have like a broader metrics and a broader view of what's going on. So total sales is a great metric. Ad spend, of course, like are we spending more, are we not spending more? Like that's helpful to know. Ad sales, of course, is this number going up and down. And then there's a couple other ratios that you can get from those 3 numbers that are helpful. A classic one, if you are in the Amazon ad community, if you touched against it at all, you'll hear this number. It's called ACOS, which is advertising cost of sale. It's something that Amazon provides in their ad console. It's very unique to Amazon advertising, and Amazon chose to do this. It's essentially the inverse of ROAS. So instead of it's ad spend divided by ad sales. So it's like, what percentage of my total ad sales am I spending to make that, right? So that's helpful from knowing and advertising profitability. However, if historically it made sense to look at that number in isolation because there really wasn't that much competition on Amazon in the advertising. And so cost per clicks were very low, conversion rates were higher. Like it was super easy to get this number to like a really good profitable level. Nowadays, it's more difficult, and that has to do with market conditions, not necessarily anything wrong with what we're doing in terms of ad strategy. And so if you only look at this number in isolation due to that organic market share impact, what you'll end up doing is pulling back and pulling back and pulling back because you're like, ads aren't profitable, which is important. But if you do that too much, you'll completely lose market share. Total sales takes a nosedive. It's a horrendous downward spiral to pull out of. Like, I literally talked to a brand I consulted with. They were down like $1 million year over year. Like they
$1 million. Wow.
$1 million in their top line sales because they pulled back too hard on ads. Like, it will come back to bite you hard if you're not paying attention to it. And so the other number that advertisers have come to look at is a number that they call total ACoS. Has a nice little acronym, TACoS. So essentially what that does is we take the ad spend and we divide it by the total sales. And so that says, okay, so what portion of my total sales am I spending on my marketing budget? And that's really helpful because if your advertising is leading to top line sales growth, then even if your ad spend increases to meet that demand, well, your total sales is still increasing. And so you're going to see that growth. And so if you're, again, we're still looking at total sales. So if we can see total sales growth maintain or ideally even lower on our total ACoS, then we can say, okay, so maybe my ads sales aren't necessarily profitable. Again, if I'm looking at an isolation of that, but I can see that top line growth and I know it's profitable because I can, like those ratios aren't completely out of whack. So between all of that, we found, those will give you a good directional idea. Obviously, that doesn't give you like the strategy and the nitty-gritties and all of the market share analysis and all of that. But it gives you a directionally like, are we screwed? Do we need to fix something? Or at least are we on the right track? Yeah.
No, that was incredible insight, Elizabeth. I'm sure our listeners will learn a lot there. I mean, I get clients that come to us all the time that says, hey, I'm making $2 million. I'm like, great. What are you profiting? What is your profit margin at the end of the day, right? And half of them actually can't tell me that. Right? They're just so busy running the day-to-day of their business, going month to month, they get lost in that, right? Especially if they have handling hundreds of screws. They're just busy with, getting operation, logistic off the ground, right? Turning over. They just see money in the bank. They're like, yep, I can fund next month's supplies. That's good enough for me. I'm like, then you're probably breaking even. Then what's the difference between this and a 9-to-5 job you're working? You're really just a cog in your own company, your own creation, right? So we always tell them, if you don't do proper bookkeeping, if you don't know your metrics, you get lost in your business, and that's not what you want to do. Elizabeth, another great point of insight that our listeners love listening to is what is your take on the current M&A market, mergers and acquisitions, right? Especially on the Amazon seller side. Is it growing? Is it slowing down? Is it stagnant? What have you seen from obviously clients and people you have worked with?
It has definitely slowed in my industry. So there was a very interesting trend that happened in my timelines. Like, time in eCom moves so quick. You're like, it was just yesterday. And you're like, that was 3 years ago. So I think it was, I want to say it was like 2 years ago, potentially about 3 years ago, where there was a real push in aggregators to buy up Amazon businesses. For the longest time, Amazon business, like if you had an eCom business and you were solely focused on the Amazon platform, like you didn't have a Shopify presence, there wasn't anything else, it was strictly on the Amazon platform, due to your reliance on a platform that you don't own, there was this, I would say like discrediting almost, that it was like an actual business. It was like, is this really yours, right? I mean, especially if you're growing through like on-platform advertising and like Amazon owns the channel and there is an inherent
risk.
There's definite inherent risk of, potentially something being shut down. Like with any sort of like non-diversification, there always is going to be. But so there was, in terms of like people investing in Amazon businesses, not necessarily to grow them, but, from like a investment perspective. Well, what happened is that several like aggregators recognized this, and they said, well, these brands are very undervalued. There's tremendous upside. Like, these brands are making multi-million dollars, and it is honestly quite ridiculous how large you can grow an Amazon business with very little like internal structure. Like
Yes.
I'm talking about like Amazon business. It's like a husband and wife and one VAA doing like $10 million a year in sales with healthy bottom line. Like unheard of in ecom, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so that this was kind of recognized. Now there's also because the platform is so all encompassing, there's so many things to learn and so many nuances, and it's not as straightforward as like what aggregators unfortunately found is that it's not as easy as they thought. And they were also coming off of the intense boom that happened when everything was shut down and during COVID, when ecom really had this like huge boom because no one could go to the stores, right? So
Yeah,
everyone was
for
purchasing
sure.
online, and so it sort of created the perfect storm of like businesses just showing record numbers almost across the board, to them coming in and saying, wow, these are very undervalued, and then snapping up a ton of brands. And that created a tremendous, in a lot of ways, towards the end of it, like a very much overvaluing of Amazon brands. And unfortunately, what's happened in our space is there's a lot of those aggregators that have gone under. Some of them have filed for bankruptcy. Some of them are very much alive and kicking. But that kind of a while ago sort of created, I don't even want to say like a bubble, but it was just like, that was the new thing to get into, right?
Definitely.
And so since then, some of the larger aggregators have snapped up the smaller ones. Some of them had just gone under. Some people have like bought back their brands from the aggregators, have like tanked them and like them again, like those kind of things. The one thing I think that's come out of that though is just a much more significant recognition of the value of like, an Amazon brand is a business. These days things are a little bit more cutthroat. Profits are always a concern. I think it'll be interesting. The playing field has sort of leveled in a way. We'll see if that kind of has an uptick or not. What we've found is that bottom line is definitely a huge concern these days due to changes in the economy, changes in the platform, just a natural maturing of any platform. It gets more cutthroat. So that it'll be interesting to watch, but I think it's kind of settled a little bit in my industry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with your insight, Elizabeth. And that's something I noticed too, right? Is that when we first got into that bubble, let's call it, of the e-commerce era, we would get a client and they were like, oh yeah, someone's interested in buying me. I was like, oh, cool. But didn't you come to me because you don't have any books or, P&L or anything ready? They're like, yeah, they're okay buying it sight unseen. I was like, really?
Oh wow.
Cool. Okay. And then now we're moving a few years past. I think like you've been noticing, aggregators being more careful. They're asking for 18 books in P&L, 24 months to look back, metrics. They're interviewing the founders more, like how long they're going to stay on, right? Even after they sell. And it seems like you're noticing the same trend, right, Elizabeth? Like aggregators are saying, well, if these guys don't know their numbers well, how can I trust that this is a viable brand that I'm buying, right? Are they even profitable? Are they even running the business the right way, operating efficiently, or they just kind of throwing money into the fire, if you will, pumping up the sales numbers and making everything look good and rosy when if you really dig into it, audit their numbers, there is nowhere to be found. Would you agree that's kind of the sentiment right now?
Yeah, I would say 100%. And I think a lot of brands there was sort of this expectation that they could come in and, maybe run it more efficiently or effectively than the brand owners, which in some cases are very much true, because I think there's a lot of scrappiness in the Amazon community just due to I would say, pretty easy entry. It's obviously more competitive. It's harder to make it, but it's just as easy as ever to get started. I think even more so due to the resources available. Um, but there was a lot of, there's something to be said for the scrappiness and for the boots on the ground and for just like the very clear understanding of the ins and outs of a certain business model, where maybe I think ideally you would marry both worlds. You would have that more broader perspective, because I think there's a lot of creativity in the M&A and the investment. And I'm always like
Yep.
really intrigued when I hear. I mean, like deals can go down a million different ways, in the ways in which they're really thinking long term and big picture. I find insanely insightful, but I think sometimes just numbers on a spreadsheet get lost into like what it actually takes to execute that. I mean, someone could be like, all right, we have a plan to grow 10% year over year, which isn't really a lofty goal, all things considered, but
Right.
it's like, well, the market's shrinking 10% year over year. So like, that's actually a lot harder than you think, right? So there's that perspective sometimes that gets lost in the broader picture. So I think both sellers and aggregators have something to learn from each other, and my hope is that kind of those who have sat back and sort of seen the ebbs and flows and seen sort of the results of maybe more aggressive for better or worse strategies and kind of how that played out. I think the ones getting into it now are much more savvy. They're going in eyes wide open, understanding that what it really takes to build the team that can execute that. And I still think it's like with any business model, right? If you know what you're doing, you're committed to figuring it out. There's a lot of things you can make work that somebody might sit back and be like, that's impossible. So you just got to figure out how to do it. But I think if you can, ideally you're learning from somebody who's gone before you, made a couple mistakes. And then, maybe you make different mistakes, but ideally they're not the same ones.
Yeah. And speaking of barrier to entry, I know you mentioned that word, Elizabeth. How do you feel about when, new sellers are saying, well, I think TikTok is easier, right? I want to do TikTok advertising or TikTok shop, because it seems like they're offering a lower barrier to entry for sellers to just get started, make a couple videos, sell someone else's product and things like that, or maybe start their own shop. I know you're a pioneer for Amazon. What would you say to these people who are either going with that channel or trying to do more of like a omni-channel, multi-channel strategy going into it?
Yeah, so I don't think omni-channel, multi-channel is necessarily a bad thing. One, I would say if you have the resources to figure it out. I think one of the worst things I've seen happen in certain businesses, or I think any business, is when you diversify because you're afraid. It's like the shiny object syndrome, where you're like, well, I couldn't get this one to work, but that one's going to be easier, right? And you're not really sitting down and thinking about it from like a logical, strategic perspective. I think if you could sit down, talk from a like logical, strategic perspective, and say, what, I consulted with. I know a lot of agencies who are adding on TikTok. That's not something that we're doing, just due to like the heavy lift in terms of creatives and management and things. But I definitely think there are plenty of resources out there. It's obviously the hot topic on the block, right? So it's the sexy new one. But it's like when an AI come out, everybody's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Everybody's like, do you know how to actually do it? No, but it's like super cool. There's a lot of stuff that are coming out, even in my industry. Everybody's like, that sounds awesome. Amazon said it's awesome. How do I even get access or like do anything? Like, how is that actually useful, right? So I think if you could sit down with somebody who has perspective on that and say like, okay, because there will be certain products that TikTok is a fantastic avenue for, just due to the nature of the platform. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to say it. I am an advocate. I am an active TikTok consumer, not necessarily on the back end or the business side, but get a little bit too much into the platform myself. So I understand, the virality, and I'm really interested to see where TikTok goes. They do have some integrations or some talks of some collaborations with Amazon themselves. So like, it will be interesting. The one thing that I have seen that I think TikTok is working to solve, and maybe on the cusp of solving, I'm not sure, is I've noticed with pretty much any platform, there hasn't really been a marriage, like the perfect marriage of social media consumption and purchasing power.
Oh, interesting.
So you can think about it from like Facebook perspective. Like Facebook ads are everywhere, Instagram ads are everywhere. Do I go to Instagram and like, oh, I'm going to shop for said thing? No, I run across it in my feed, or I see something interesting, and then I may then go on to purchase or go to shop or whatever it may be, right? But my intent on that platform is not to purchase. Where in Amazon, it's very much purchase intent. And they actually have tried, I don't know if you know this, they've tried several avenues to see if they can get sort of that social media aspect. So they actually have something called Amazon Live. So actually,
I've seen those. Yeah.
So they go live. There's posts that you can use. They have some other, like, they're trying to build up brand stores. They're trying to, I'm like, nobody goes to Amazon to consume social media. Like no one thinks it's a purchasing platform, right? And they've done that insanely well. And I think TikTok is really in these stages. It's very much still foot very solid in the social media camp and the social media consumption. And I think they have like just the way the platform is, or they coming in at the right time, their algorithm, the For You page is a little bit too specific sometimes. Like they've done a lot of things very, very well. And I know they're. It will be interesting to see, can they fully merge that purchasing and the social media aspect. And I've purchased a couple items from TikTok Shop, but to be honest, I kind of went and checked and saw if they were available on Amazon first, because my trust in that platform, I know the one thing Amazon has done fantastic from the get-go, they take care of their customers. As much as that might piss some sellers off, because like sometimes they really, I'll be honest, they get the short end of the stick, but from a platform perspective and from a market authority perspective, I know I can go on Amazon and I can purchase a product, and if I am not satisfied, I'm going to call in, I'm going to get excellent customer service, there's going to be no issues with my returns. Again, I'm speaking from a shopper perspective, sellers might not like that aspect so much, but it's like, because of that, because I trust them, because I know that they have good prices, they have excellent selection, they have quality customer service, and I'm going to get fast shipping. Again, all the things that I think from inception, Jeff Bezos was insanely insightful to recognize the things that really made for a good consumer experience and continue to double and triple down on there. I think that is, I mean, from the outside looking in, that has been like the deciding factor of like complete market dominance that they have. And I think if they can continue to do that, so because my trust is inherently in the platform, I'm going to go there first. That is my preferred choice. And if I can't find it there, then maybe I'll think about it and maybe I'll purchase it elsewhere. But I would prefer to purchase everything through that platform because it's so easy. And so, again, I think TikTok Shop will always kind of be a thing. I mean, like, Instagram Shop is a thing, right? Who really? That's not where I go to really purchase items. So I think time will tell, but it's definitely something that is booming, and there are incentives to get on there. And so again, if it makes sense from a strategic perspective, not from a fear perspective, whenever you're making business decisions because you're afraid of something, or you're trying to ignore that big hairy issue over in the corner and you think this is going to be the savior to it, like that's where you can oftentimes get into trouble. But if you're like, this makes sense, let me test it, I have the resources to do it, I have the support to be able to do it, I think if it makes sense, it can be a really good business move. I say that, obviously, that would be a customer that would be outside of my reach at that point, or wouldn't need me. But I do think it makes a lot of sense. Again, if you go into it thinking about it.
Yeah, Elizabeth, I don't know if this is true or not. It's probably a conspiracy theory myself, but I think TikTok is reading my mind, right? So I never thought of needing a towel warmer. One of those things where, you get out of the shower, you have a nice warm towel waiting for you. But after getting blasted by 10, For You posts on TikTok, I started thinking to myself, I need a towel warmer. So I started looking into the shops, clicking through it, seeing what it is. But I did the same approach you did, right, Elizabeth? I go and check Amazon and be like, do they have the same thing? Oh, they do, but it was $15 more, right?
Yeah.
So I think the one advantage TikTok has is they're like, well, we're gonna be the best price, right? We may not have the customer's trust, we may not have best return policies, shipping time, all those things. We're just gonna beat you on price and give you a million coupons to make you want to buy from us, right? And I think that's what they need to do right now, to even try to take some of that share away from Amazon, right? Otherwise, I think they have to work kind of alongside Amazon to really push their strategy forward. But yeah, I did the same thing. I had to check Amazon. They saw the same thing. What are the reviews? I don't trust TikTok reviews right now. There's not that many on there, first of all, right, compared to Amazon. But yeah, I ended up buying a towel warmer. Yeah. It worked.
Nice.
Anyway, so Liz, on a little bit lighter top, I don't know if this is lighter, but so for me, I have two daughters, right? They're, one's 6, one's 3. And it's a full-time job juggling, work and family and school and all the events and activities they have going on. I don't know how you do it with six. Can you tell the audience, how do you balance that? Like how does your work life look with six kids, managing obviously a very, very successful ad agency? How does that look for you on a day-to-day basis?
Day to day. So the one thing that I found out before we even really started the business thing is it important to understand what you want your life to look like? You're getting a peek into like my lifelong charge forward to try and figure out what the heck I want. Sometimes it's difficult to figure out what you want, but I found the more that you can relinquish the shoulds, or the you have tos, and you really, once you take a really good hard look at them and realize, I'm only doing this because I'm worried about certain perceptions of myself, and then really just focus on what it is that you want your life to look like. And ideally, you have a partner that's lockstep with that. I'm very blessed to say that I do.
That's awesome.
You can end up creating a life that might not appeal to somebody else, but is insanely fulfilling for yourself. And so I've been very, very blessed in that. So having a large family, by the way, I come from a family of 6 kids. I'm the oldest.
Oh, okay. So okay, just pass down.
But that was something that we decided even before we got married. We said, quote, large. We didn't know what a large family would look like.
You didn't mean that means a basketball team, huh?
Who knows? So that was something we decided, and we decided homeschooling. So part of that was just, this is the decision, and then you figure out how to live that out, which I think there's a lot of validity to that approach. Not everyone's going to know exactly what that looks like for them, but I do get those comments like, oh my gosh, how do you do it? And I'm like, I just do because I have to, like, to figure out the work-life balance or how to navigate, working very long, crazy hours.
And avoid burnout, right?
To avoid burnout. And funny thing I found out about burnout, this is a side note, because I went through like a really weird period very recently where I started to feel it pretty intensely, and I hadn't that intense for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
I discovered that, at least for me, could be completely different for anyone else, but my experience has been burnout comes the most intense when I feel as if I am backed into a corner and I am dealing with the situation where I feel like I don't have options.
Right.
That is what I found. And so, actually, this was really insightful. My husband, I lean on him for a lot of things. Insight being one of them. He has some very unique perspectives that I wouldn't have. And so I was doing a thing because I felt like I had to. And there was a ton of things that I really wanted to get to, but I felt like for whatever reason, I tend to be a very black and white person. I was like, I feel like I can't. I want to do it, but I can't. And it was driving me crazy. And it brought me to this place where I'm like, I don't even know if I can keep functioning like this. Like, I don't see, again, going back to the crafting the life you want, I was like, I don't see a way forward through this that gets me into a place where I want to be. And I was just like, what the heck? And I'm like, this is the first time I felt that, and not everything's going to be fantastic, right? Like, you're gonna have moments of stuck, you're gonna have moments of anxiety, you're gonna have things, but like generally when you look at it on a net, a grand scale, does it excite you or does it not? And so one of the questions he asked me, he said, okay, like, we're trying to do this thing, we think this is the focus, whatever. He was like, if you, and again, I was sometimes outside perspective because I was stuck in this, like, felt like there wasn't a way out. And that was causing just immense amounts of, sometimes you're like, oh my God, it's all in my head. And I know it's all in my head, but still, it's manifesting itself physically. And so the question he asked me, he goes, well, forget about money, forget about anything else. If you had no obligations, you had no anything, what would you want to do? And I was like, immediately. And it turns out it wasn't because I was so narrowly focused or felt like I was stuck in this rut or stuck in this place that I didn't want to be, doing things that I didn't want to do. I felt like, I don't even know how to keep functioning. Like, to me, what I was doing was equated with the business. And when I thought through that, going back to like my opening, I was like, oh, I love going in and like figuring out things and dissecting them and like really just understanding like the practical applications of abstract concepts. Love that. And then roping in people to help me just really have like a collaborative approach, and like when I can take a different perspective and marry it with somebody else's perspective and a little bit of dash of something from another industry and come out with something that just like is like I live for that. I love that. Giving people light bulb moments. I love that. And that actually is something that very much coordinates with what we're doing in the business. So it wasn't that I had to disregard the business, I just had to disregard the way in which I was doing things and recognize that like, oh, so I have learned when you are approaching burnout and you feel stuck, it's like, if you can't, and it's hard to do, sit there back and be like, all right, what, all things being equal, what would I want? What would I want to be doing? What are the things that I love doing? Where can I get that spark back? And sometimes it's not as far away as you think, or it's not as different as you think it would be.
That's very profound, Elizabeth. I'm glad you're able to kind of, logically get yourself out of a rut, right? Because I also get into those situations too, where there's all these deadlines approaching, especially around tax season, right? You're like, oh my God, there's so much to do. How am I going to get through it, right? And then if you don't take it step by step, you just end up, having high anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, and you're like, I'm just going to go in my corner and just pretend it all doesn't exist, right? But then you realize, well, the reason I build a team is I can allocate work right efficiently and really for better term of word, be a little bit of a puppet master. It's like, here, this is what you're best at. This is what you're best at doing, right? And then you start to kind of lift that burden away from you, right? And you think your way through, and yeah, you kind of have to think about that motivation and end goal. For me, I'm sure the same for you is my children, right? They're kind of like the motivators that like, yep. This is why I keep pushing. This is why I want to be successful. Want to prepare for the next generation. Make sure that they're well equipped, right, for whatever they want to do in life, right? Maybe it's also start AI agency, but maybe it's be a doctor or something else, right? So
yeah,
I'm totally gonna get your perspective there. Cool, Elizabeth. So we're at the time where we want to turn to this 3-letter word that I say a lot of business owners avoid wanting to know about, and that's TAX, tax. Right? A lot of businesses don't want to think about it, and it's possibly one of the last things on people's mind. But what we're here to do is to kind of educate them, saying, don't be afraid of it, embrace it, and really learn to succeed, do good tax education, good tax management. So, Elizabeth, I'd love to learn, as a business owner, a successful ad agency, how do you deal with tax filings, if a better word, right? How do you deal with thinking about tax deductions for your business? Any good strategies, tips for listeners out there who's like, hey, I don't want to go into this because I heard the IRS might, take all my money away, right? So, any good stories or advice for the readers out there?
Yes,
listeners?
I'm gonna have a cop-out answer, and thankfully, so if I didn't share it, my husband is the co-founder with me, and his family is very entrepreneurial, and so to them, writing up a business plan on the back end of a napkin, kind of identifying if it's going to work or not, and moving forward, like to them, that's second nature. It's like, they open up businesses like it's nothing. For me, I'm like, oh my God, I have no idea. Like, what is an LLC, or what's an S corp? What's the differences? Like, what's the? I don't know. So I'm very thankful to have that to lean on, and so. They also, though, I think it's very invaluable to have someone, like, they still use CPAs, even though they're very knowledgeable. I'm sure he could figure out it on his own. That's a lot. It's a lot to figure out. And then more importantly, I think somebody who you can work with to really, like, there's a difference between just having somebody who files your taxes and somebody who helps you plan. So how you were talking about like deductible. So if you can look at through the year, and I'm only gleaning off of what he's told me, because again, he's, he's like, all right, so we need this, and we have quarterlies, and we're projecting for this, and so we should start. So he's already going ahead and paying quarterlies, even if we haven't been prompted to do so. The worst thing you can do is not plan for taxes. Mm-hmm. Thank God we haven't done that, but I've talked to businesses, and it is terrifying. My brother, ended up purchasing a business, completely different industry. It's like a brick and mortar. And he found out that like the guy didn't plan for taxes and always, pretty much every single year, had to open up a personal loan to be able to cover taxes.
Yeah.
Like, that is not a place you want to be on. Like, if you're opening up a personal loan, or you have to get a loan, or you have to beg, borrow, and steal to be able to pay back the IRS, that's not like income producing. Like, ideally, in a perfect world, if you are borrowing money or you're leveraging debt, the best way to leverage debt is into something that is going to be income producing or an asset. Paying your taxes, it's a fact of life, but it is not an income producing. It's like the exact polar opposite of income producing. So you want to be able to plan for that, so you're not like seeking a bunch of investment capital because you didn't plan properly. The best way to do that, of course, would be get someone who knows what the heck they're doing. So I'm thankful to have a bridge of like a partner who at least understands the overall aspects of it and can help in those decision making. And then we work with a CPA firm to help us, do a lot of the technicals and add insights where they have them. And then we also have bookkeepers, because that's the other thing, is you want to make sure your books are up to date. There are some businesses where like, oh, it's the end of the year, let's figure out everything that happened. Like, if you're
that's a lot.
That is a lot. And of course, it also depends on how fast your industry moves, right? So if you're in like an eCom business, sales are happening every single day. Money's going out the window every single day. The transactions are like intense. Businesses like ours, there's a little bit more of an ebb and flow. So maybe I don't need to know, obviously I need to know what's in the bank account day to day, but in terms of like absolute up-to-date books, I can have a little bit of flexibility there. So it's really kind of going back to what we talk about software or strategy or anything. It's like, what do I need? What are the things I need to hedge against? What is the cadence? What is the frequency? Who's going to give me, again, those strategic insights so I can, again, forecast, plan, understand what's going on? Because I think the worst place you can be is when it's the end of the year and you go, oh crap, I haven't planned for this. This is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. Fantastic, I made income. Not so great. I mean, because like, correct me if I'm wrong, but taxes are off of top line sales. They're not really factoring in profits. So if you're not paying attention to those things, you can end up in really deep water, which again, if you can anticipate and plan for, you're going to be in a much better position than if you're just like, it's the end of the year, I wonder what happened.
Yeah, and you can give away so much of your profit if you're not careful about tax planning, right? If you're solely focused on, okay, this is the amount of sales I'm making, I'm probably gonna be paying taxes off that. Yeah, sure, that is basically how it works. But there's just a lot of tax deductions, a lot of ways you can, have write-offs for your business, right? Ways to like, not to, skirt around anything, but the tax code is vast and there's a lot of things built in there for business owners. I remember when, we were dealing with COVID, they were giving away a lot of COVID-related credits that business owners were not taking advantage of. That could have reduced like, tens of thousands of dollars off their bills if they did take advantage of it, or, have there was employee retention credit that was huge, right? The more people that you keep in your business working and, didn't fire because of the panic of the COVID situation, the more credit government was going to give you, right? Or the more investments you're willing to put into your business, buy equipment, right? There's a way to, accelerate your depreciation, things I'm sure, your husband maybe talk to you about. You're like, oh, I don't want to hear about that right now. I want to focus on my clients, things like that. Yeah, you deal with that. This is why we're partners. You're good at what you do. I'm good at what I do, right? Kind of thing. So, but there's one other point I want to mention, Elizabeth, is a lot of sales out there, I see one of my most popular blogs is, they want to know like, how exactly do they pick, the perfect bookkeeper or the perfect CPA for your business? Is there certain criteria or traits or insights you have seen, maybe not even from your own experience, but maybe from clients you talk to where like, I pick a great CPA or great bookkeeper for XX reasons, right? Any kind of insight into that? What you can share with our listeners out there?
Yeah, so I think it's just somebody who really understands the industry that you're in. I think it's probably very helpful in addition to like all the planning and the proactiveness that we talked for. And I think it's helpful to be very clear with expectations, and any service business are helpful. It's like going into this, you would never want to get somebody who's say preparing taxes and then just like expect they're going to give you tax strategy, right? Like that's two very different things. So again, it's like understanding. So you're going in like, okay, do you guys do this? And then also, do you do this in my specific industry? Because like say with selling on Amazon, like there's so many of the individual like Amazon fees or like storage fees come up. There's sometimes like things are fluctuating, things are increasing. And so if you have somebody who understands that, then they're not just like, oh, here's a big lump of Amazon fees. It's like, well, when we're looking at, all this, it seems like your storage fees have increased, and maybe that's something, so to kind of make, which I guess is technically a little bit more bookkeeping versus tax. It all like it's
They're
kind
both
of
important.
right. So it's getting someone I think too who would be able to understand a little bit more of the nuances. Not like they can't learn, or at the very least, I would say somebody who's open to dig into it for you, which obviously takes time. So somebody has to have the bandwidth for that. But I think that's the one thing that I've noticed that a lot of sellers really asking about is like, okay, if say like my profits are going down, well then I would want to know why, and then I might want to go in and say, okay, looks like this is increased, this is decreased, and then again just kind of tell the story and make sense, because if you can tell the story and you can make sense of it, then you can figure out what the heck to do about it, or if there's anything to do about it, versus if you're just like, oh, it's lower and that's not really it doesn't give you anything to actually do about it.
Yeah, definitely. I always tell our clients, like, tax planning is a year-round event. Don't wait till the last minute. There's not much you can do right at that point in time. And the other really important thing is just find someone who knows what the heck you're doing, right? Speak your lingo, right? You wouldn't want to hire a dentist to go have surgery on you, have heart surgery on you, right? So, really specialize, find someone who specialize in what you do, and you're going to be successful, right? When you allocate that. So, yeah, and I want to look ahead, Elizabeth. Any exciting plans or projects for Jungler in the future, next couple years?
Yes, I am insanely excited to dig more into market analysis and really understanding. So as things get more competitive, we find more and more of our brands are asking why, what can I do about it? And the biggest question that they really just want to know is, are my ads effective? Are they effective? Are they simply like sort of cannibalizing what I could have made without the ads? Are they growing? Like, okay, if top line revenue is growing, is it because there's an uptick in the market trends, or is it something that we've actually done? And so the one thing that I find that I'm working on, like we're getting good at, I want to get even better at, is when you ask any admin, this is I think constant struggle, and maybe just the like agency community or else, when someone says, like, hey, are my ads good, right? You're like, what, like, how long is a piece of string? Like, good against what? Like, what are we trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And like we had that conversation, like our best brands, they understand that there's extenuating circumstances. Like my bestseller went out of stock. What are you going to do about it? Sales are going to be down, right? But it's like, it's just really quantifying and qualifying that good and making sure we're pushing towards good and leveraging every single new update that Amazon rolls out to make sure that we're moving as quickly as possible towards good and leveraging every single thing at our disposal. And so, which thankfully sets me right in my happy place of figure out new stuff, dive into the messy, make sense of this crazy ball of I don't even know what the heck, and then try and distill that into actionable insights that I can then. So the one thing I'm most excited about is I used to be, which by the way, do not run a company like this, but I used to be like, go into the workshop, emerge with something. This is fantastic. Here, guys, use it. And everybody's like, I don't even know what this thing is. It was kind of useful, but it wasn't really what I needed. And so, like, I'd be like, hey, isn't that thing awesome that I made? And they're like, okay. And so what I'm realizing now is that and what I'm really excited from, it takes more time, obviously, to gather insights, distill those, allow additional input, allow ideas to really come from the team and the people who are boots on the ground actually using the insights. But when we've done that, like, what we're building is miles better than anything I could have built on my own. And that to me is just incredible. Like that is where I just get so excited about what we're doing and how we're doing it. Like when we identify an issue, when it's all, we loop in the right people, we tackle it, we dissect it, we allow the additional inputs and everyone to just operate within their spheres of genius, and me not steamroll everybody and be like, this is super exciting, I want to do it all myself, right? So that's there's several projects in the works that we're currently working. I mean, not even really just to create, more like to perfect when it comes to like that market analysis or the client communication aspect. I think communication, as things get more complex, is going to be the thing that sets apart the okay agencies from the rock stars. And so I'm gunning to be one of those agencies. I'm gunning to be the rock star. And so for that, I just need to make sure that my team is constantly up leveling. And I've been so just absolutely thrilled with how they've kept pace with the industry, our expectations continuously. It's like when we hit a bar, we just keep raising it, and then they keep rising to the occasion. And to me, like, to have people on, in my bench that are up for that challenge, and not only up for it, like excited about it, it's fantastic. So I think for us, it'll just be getting deeper into the analysis and finding better and better ways to dissect the why and the what to do about it.
Honestly, Elizabeth, that's very inspiring, and I can really feel the passion, in your voice, and when you're talking about your agency and the data-driven approach that you have. We always love to end the podcast on what we call the final advice, right? If you can give one piece, or even 3 pieces of advice to someone just starting an entrepreneurial journey, or maybe inspired to start an Amazon ad agency, right? What would that be, right? What would something be like? Someone like, I'm still on the fence. Like, can I really be an Amazon seller? Or can I really start my own business? What would you say to them? Maybe 3 steps. Let's say 3 simple steps that says, you do these 3 things first, you'll be on your way, right? You can start really feeling like you can really make this journey happen.
I'll give it to you from my perspective. Could be right or could be wrong, so take it for what it's worth.
Of course, yeah. Love it.
I will say the first thing to do is listen. 100%. Whenever I have, it's helpful to get, what would be the right word? I'm searching for like the specific word I'm looking for. Is it's helpful to get context or insights from maybe others who are doing something that you want to do. Right? There's almost an excess of information at this point out there.
Yeah, there is.
But see, there's a lot of people who do competitor analysis. Competitor analysis isn't bad. I mean, like, I'll be honest, I go on like other ad agencies' websites, like, oh, what are they doing? What's their header, right? Like, it's not a bad thing to look at. But what I have found is that whenever that's the only thing that I'm looking at, whenever that is the only, like, that is the primary thing which is consuming me and I'm trying to improve based off of. I mean, like, oh, such and such is doing this offer right now. Like, oh, maybe I should think of that, or some such and such is doing that, or they've really grown and these are the things that they're doing. That's helpful. But that's not what you should be optimizing for or building off of. You absolutely need to listen to the people who you intend to serve. Listen hard, and when you find something that keeps coming up, like, so how I was talking to you about the analysis and the category insights and how they're asking about forecasting, they want to know what good is. I know that because clients and brands in my space are telling me that. That's why I know that's important. It's not because I'm seeing competitors do it. It's not because now there's a lot of great information on how to do that. And so I will leverage that information to say, okay, what insights are out there? What can I adopt? What can I learn from? But if I was only looking at, people, honestly, most people who would be considered competitors are really good friends of mine. So I'm not going to be like, competition. But whenever I'm looking to say, like, okay, what's the market doing? I'm going to miss out on a ton of things that will make, and again, those things that I've described are things that I enjoy. So the thing that I've found is that It's any entrepreneurship journey freaking hard. I don't care what business it is. I don't care what industry it is. I don't care how much of a blue ocean it is and nobody else is doing this and oh my gosh, it's a rocket ship. It's going to be hard. There's going to be days where it is painful. There's going to be days where you're like, I don't even want to get up today. I don't want to have that conversation. I don't want to hop on that call. I don't want to. You're going to have to do it shaking in your boots and terrified. And how do I know that? Because I did it and I'm still doing it. Like, I had a conversation this morning, came out to a good conclusion, was fantastic. I wasn't really looking forward to it, right? And so if you can find something that you can bring unique passion to, if you can identify a need. So listen, ask the why question more than once. I found at least 3 or 4 times, sometimes 6. So it's like, oh, I'm gonna grow sales on Amazon. Why? Oh, okay, because, I've identified this as a great industry. Oh, why? Well, I really don't like my 9 to 5 and I want to leave my job. Oh, okay, why? Well, we have, there's a reason behind it. Ask, dissect, listen to understand, don't listen to answer. So you find out that, you say, okay, this is the deepest need that is underserved. This is the thing I can love. I can do every day, all day. Even when the thing sucks, I have my happy place. Then that is going to propel you to being able to get through the hard days, get through all the stuff that's not so great, and you can enjoy it more along the way. I don't know if there's a third piece of advice, but I would just say, again, like Amazon, if you can relentlessly pursue what your customer wants, that is always going to be a recipe for a good brand.
Being relentless, being a good listener, and probably willing to take feedback, right? Mm-hmm. So you can learn along the journey. That's fantastic advice, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being on here, Elizabeth, today. There is one last thing. We have a very special promotional giveaway. Elizabeth, would you like to tell us what the first 10 listeners who click on that special link I'm going to put below in the show notes going to get today?
Yes, absolutely. So if you have an Amazon business, if you're running advertising and you're like, I feel like I'm missing something. There's this piece, there's this thing I know I could be doing better. I have no idea how or why or what is stopping me from hitting that growth curve that I'm really looking for. I am offering to do a completely free and personalized, deeply personalized audit of your ad account. So,
woohoo! Yeah, that is a fantastic offer, Elizabeth. Thank you for offering that to our listeners. I'm sure a lot of them will be eager to grab on after they listen to this podcast. Again, listeners out there, thank you for listening today to our great podcast session. Elizabeth, thank you for being on here.
And that wraps up another powerful conversation here on the Profit Powerhouse. We hope today's insights and strategies inspire you to tackle your own business challenges and take your profitability to the next level. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps spread the word. A big thank you to our sponsor, Free Cash Flow Agency, the online accounting firm dedicated to helping online businesses keep more of their hard-earned money and grow profitably. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, your next big breakthrough is just one bold step away. Until next time, this is Alan Chen signing off.